We are International Hospitality Media, or IHM for short. IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends, and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes, and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers & George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments, and low-cost digital content. And so they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 48,000 of our email database across all the sectors, and over 67,000 across our social channels. Everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, meet. With IHM, contact us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.
Hello everybody and welcome. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Today we are going to be talking about elevating the guest experience in the hotel lobby of tomorrow. My name's Eloise Hanson. I'm the editor of hospitality here at Boutique Hotel News, and if you're unfamiliar with BHN, we are a B2B multimedia platform covering the global boutique, lifestyle and luxury hotel industry. Today's webinar is in partnership with Guestline, an Access company. Guestline is an award-winning hospitality platform for future-focused hoteliers, and we have Chris here on the call today who's going to be joining our conversation, and I think this is a prime opportunity to hand straight over to Chris to introduce himself and give a wider introduction to Guestline. So over to you.
Thanks, Eloise. So hi everyone. My name is Chris. I'm part of the product management team here at Guestline. For those who are unfamiliar, Guestline are a hospitality software company. We build solutions for the hospitality industry. We've been doing so for about 30 years now. And we work across around, I think it's 25 countries, 5 continents, where we are delivering solutions that actually take some of the pain points away that you may suffer as a business. And obviously innovating to find things and ways to make your lives even easier, but also make the guest lives even easier. So at Guestline, part of my role is to try and identify those pain points, speak with hoteliers a lot. We do a lot of traveling ourselves. We are guests ourselves. So good to have a conversation here today about how we can help you understand what we do so you can help you do what you do.
Thank you so much, Chris. And further details on Guestline and some contact details have been popped into the chat if you would like to learn more. Anna, let's come to you next, please.
Hello, so I'm Anna Costa. I'm the Senior Commercial Technology Manager here for Queensway, looking after our hotel business side for Queensway. So primarily looking after our budget boutique hotel Point A brand. Been with the company 6 years now. It's a new role for me, but my background hospitality is 20 years plus in revenue and sales. So so I've moved into this exciting new role, and it's been really good so far. And we are a Guestline customer. Very happy and proud.
Oh, delighted to have you, Anna. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
And last but not least, Rich, over to you.
Hi, I'm Rich Tomlin. I'm Head of Innovations at Tonic Associates. We're a multidiscipline design agency with particular pedigree, I'd say, in hospitality. We're going 20 years plus. And my role is more kind of a strategic stroke creative role, more on the front end of the projects. But yeah, it's an enjoyable job, nice bunch to work with.
Oh, fantastic. Well, delighted to meet you all. And all the LinkedIn profiles of our speakers have been popped into the chat, as I encourage you all to connect and carry on this conversation long after today's webinar has finished. to provide you with just a quick overview of format, we'll probably spend around 45 minutes in discussion today, followed by some time to take some questions from the audience. So please submit your questions using the Q&A function or the chat function, and I'll get round to asking those as and when. And a recording of today's session will be emailed to every registrant within a couple of days. Now, to provide some context for today's webinar, I actually recently sat down with Guestline CEO, Andrew McGregor, during which we talked about future technology trends, and he highlighted 4. Number 1, that there will be a continuing move to cloud technology. 2, that the need for technology solutions to help hoteliers do more is only becoming greater, and as a result of that, it is driving expansion of technology platforms, your all-in-one technology platforms. As a result of that, your 3rd trend is that there is going to be a better use of data. It's going to be more granular in the future. And all of this, your 4th trend, is going to be supported by AI to make our jobs more productive, more efficient, more seamless. Regarding lobbies, however, and how technology is shaping these spaces, one of Yotel's brand standards is its self-service check-in area mission control. And the company's just announced 4 global openings next year. And similarly, Langham Hospitality's millennial brand has what it calls the House of Yin and Flow, which is a lifestyle hub. And at its 2nd site in Hong Kong, this House of Yin and Flow hub includes an open plan, multifunctional lobby with guest services such as its check-in and check-out, all supported by an app. Now, on the next slide are some headlines taken from other media sources. And in a feature called How Technology is Being Used to Solve the Hotel Staffing Crisis, some examples including staff scheduling, payments. I know us 3 panelists were, us 4, I should say, we were talking all about payments just before this webinar started, as well as attracting and retaining staff. And technology in this instance was digital tipping was cited as a reason, as a way to engage and retain staff. And I just want to finish off today's context with a quote from Caroline Tuft. So earlier this summer, McKinsey published insights on the hotel of the future. And Caroline Tuft, who represents views from the company's travel, logistics and infrastructure practice, said, "The big change that I anticipate more than anything in hotels in the future is that every single pain point will be removed. There will be no check-in line. There will be much better, more flexible options. You won't have to wait until 4 p.m. to check in." And I think that is a great tone to leave it on, so that we can really talk about elevating the guest experience in the hotel lobby of tomorrow. And I'm going to kick off today's conversation with a question to Chris, if I may. Chris, how are you seeing sort of guest booking and spending behaviours changing?
Okay, in terms of changing, I think it's good to set a context first of big changes. So when we see changes in technology, especially adoption, there's normally something happening out in the wider world that's driving that. And obviously, one thing we've got in hospitality is the pandemic. So probably the biggest change that we've seen since the pandemic, by the way, all of these things were starting to move in a direction of self-service. Technology was becoming more part of our lives, but the pandemic seems to have accelerated this hugely, especially in hospitality. So it was probably inevitable that we'd get to these points. And for instance, before I jump into some of those ideas, one of the things that we always track is how airlines revolutionized the way we interact way before the pandemic, but they've continued accelerating, and hospitality is kind of catching up, which is this whole premise of, I can actually do this myself, probably easier, cheaper, quicker, more efficiently at the time of day that I want to do it, in my own, the comfort of my own room or my own office. instead of having to visit a travel agent or instead of having to actually telephone or communicate within business hours. So the biggest trend really that we've seen is the guests have taken more control. So during the pandemic, we were forced to. So as consumers, all of a sudden banking, so spending money, you couldn't visit the bank anymore, you couldn't visit shops anymore to actually spend that money. Things were done more online. We started to trust technology more. So across a whole age demographic, doesn't matter who we were suddenly all thrown into the same mix of, well, we've got to trust the tech now because we can't have those face-to-face interactions. And of course, while that was happening, hospitality had to shut down. And where we've kind of ended up, I think there was a quote that I read a while back that we've accelerated about 3 to 4-fold in terms of tech adoption change. And how's that affected hospitality? Well, we've seen year on year a change in the way consumers search. So the way you actually find your accommodation and search for your travel. So I think there's a quote, just putting a paper together last week, there's a quote, and it's around 72% of hotel bookings happen within 48 hours of a Google search. And I know that's sounding out of technology, but this is just one way that travel has changed. We're not looking at brochures anymore. We are taking word of mouth. There's still a huge amount of decision making taken from trust. So you will trust other people's reviews, you'll trust your friends, your family to recommend, but we're actually putting a lot of our faith in technology and especially the search engines to help us find travel destinations, find accommodation. So that's a big change. We also see a change in booking itself. So not just finding the accommodation and how you're searching, but actually making that reservation is again a lot more contact free and long distance. And because of that, hoteliers have had to adapt quite a lot, substantially revising things. Cancellation policies, for instance, was a big one during the pandemic. If you're booking something remotely that you've never seen, or you're making a purchase for something you've never touched or experienced, there's a lot of risk involved and things can change. It's quite volatile. But as a hotelier, you want some guarantees and reassurances. So a lot around policies and payments, which again had to be recognized by the industry. And I think the way that consumers have adopted to just those two particular pieces, again, as I said, was going to be inevitable, but it's actually accelerated. And then further things, I think you mentioned earlier from Andrew McGregor's talk from our side, was more towards the hotel experience then. People being able to deal with that reservation once it's made, or those plans once they're made, being able to interact with that reservation without having to pick up the phone, drop an email, or have a conversation with somebody, because that's what we're used to. That's what we've become more akin to. Arriving at the hotel, certainly going over to your lobby of the future quote, these are great things that hotels are looking now to adopt. But I think the danger that we've got is some guests aren't ready to make that change fully. So hotels who are trying to mandate this kind of, let's have this hotel where there are no staff, you're going to check in, everything's going to be totally self-service. I think we have to be careful when we look to the future, because some of the thrill of travel and some of the thrill of what we do as consumers with hotels is about the experience. And for some people, that experience is still delivered by human beings and people. So there's a lot to be said, I think, about how far we should take our thoughts on the technology, and then where we actually think of the service that we want to provide as well. So yeah, quite a lot's changed, but actually hotels, hospitality, it's one of the oldest industries on the planet, and some things never change. There's always going to be a building, you're always going to be going there for some kind of experience, and there's always going to be people in the building. You can't, for instance, not yet, maybe in the future, but you can't change certain things like housekeeping. You have to check in at a certain time because human beings have to come and make sure that the rooms are ready for you to occupy, and your experience is good. So yeah, bit of a mixed bunch of thoughts on that.
Thank you, Chris. And building on top of that overview and maybe unpicking some of these trends, Anna, how have changing guest behaviours shaped Queensway commercial strategy?
Yep. So from a point A, our 10 properties that we have across the UK and in Dublin, coming out of the pandemic, there was lots of market changes. We had to adapt. We had to go with the changes. But we've had a good, strong growth, luckily, that's kept us going. We're in a good commercial point now with our revenue and our occupancy. Rates in the market are stabilizing, especially within the budget sector. So we're in a good place. So now it's, what else can we do? Revenue is good, commercial teams are happy, but what else can we do for our customers, for our loyal customers? So we have been focusing a lot, which most hoteliers will be, or is on our direct, looking after those guests that are loyal to our brand, looking at what they need from us as a point A brand, what can we do for them? So the focus has been on direct, on our guest journey. What do they want from our hotels? What do they see? So, we started off quite basic of looking at how we communicate to our guests. How many emails do we send them before they even arrive? Because even the guest journey, it starts when they book, when they look you up, when they Google you. So how are we making sure that we are communicating them in the right time for the right reasons, not bombarding them with constant sales messages and things? So we took, a couple of steps back and we looked, right, our pre-registration, let's start it simple. What is the key ones that we do want our guests to have? And pre-registration was one of them, so that we could start collecting, quality data on our guests, especially our regular guests. Do we have their full address, so we know where they're traveling from? Capturing that quality data just helps us be able to recognize our guests and see what they want. So pre-registration was a key thing for us. Part of the pre-registration is a nice pre-arrival kind of guide to the guests about the hotel that they're going to stay at, about the local area as well within the hotel surroundings, things, recommendations that we have, any perks that we have in the local area with restaurants. Not all of our hotels can offer an F&B service, but we certainly partner up with plenty of good quality restaurants in the area that our teams try out. So we partner with those and we give it to our guests as a recommendation. So key information before they arrive, just to help their journey when they do arrive at the hotel. They know, what they're coming, what's around. Even the simplest thing as getting directions. Everybody can Google it, but if it's right there for you, you're going to click on it and just say, okay, how do I get there? I know where I'm going now. So yeah, lots of changes, but we've taken some basic steps back and just re-looked at how we engage with our guests before they arrive at the hotels. So yeah, lots of learnings, but it's good to see what guests are looking for.
Thanks, Anna. Chris, could you expand on this and maybe share some insights as to how brands and hoteliers can enhance their engagement with their audiences digitally?
Yeah. And I mean, obviously, we work alongside Anna with a lot of the directives that their properties are putting in place. So she's absolutely on the money. The one thing that we would say hoteliers don't do enough of, and it's a really easy step. You don't need a degree in computer science, or you don't need to stay that up to date with technology. You just have to be a consumer and think more as a consumer. And one of the things that we all do as a guest is interact and make reservations. We interact with the hotel staff. And some of the things that we see as guests that we find pain points are exactly the kind of struggles that your guests are going to have as a hotelier. And that's a really important thing, because we did a lot of research around some of our key products, and we do things like we go and camp out in hotel receptions. We try to be obviously inconspicuous as possible and cause the least amount of trouble, but just observing some of the very simple things. And one of the anecdotes that I love to put forward is hoteliers. We spoke to some general managers and they say, oh yeah, our reception team are really on it. Check-ins last between 3 and 5 minutes, and the guests can get straight to their room with their room key, and that's it. Their stay begins. But if you're the 5th or 6th person in that queue, there's another X multiplied by that time in front of you, and you're standing there watching those other people go through that 3 to 5 minutes. So how does technology help? Well, as Anna says, one of the key things is, again, going back to when I mentioned airlines earlier, has it been streamlined? You can do more yourself. You can act with those systems of records and the data sources at the hotel as a guest before you arrive and shorten the amount of time that you need to spend in those processes.
Yeah.
Not only is this great for the guests, and it's really important to think about the guests, but we also see a change in staff morale at the hotels. So when your average hotel team are performing these mundane admin, and we'd like to call them zombie tasks, you're just doing the same thing repetitive over and over again. There's no satisfaction and it shows. Whereas actually good interactions when you're not doing the mundane stuff and you're actually talking about the local area, or you're talking about the weather, or you're even just breaking the ice, it changes the guest perception, makes their stay more lucrative for the hotel, more personal for the guest, and meets the expectations. And I think if I was to be honest and say, should I as a hotelier invest in more technology, we always say there's no limit to do it. And obviously we're a little biased at Guestline to say this, but one of the great quotes that I heard some time ago was, if you can implement technology in the hotel that's bringing value to the customer will come back. And always think of that, as I said right at the start, those two things. What's in it for you as a hotelier? So obviously, Anna, driving revenues, guest satisfaction, etc. But you just ask what's in it for the guest. You're asking the guest to do something electronically. Just think, or digitally rather, just think what's in it for the guest. How are they going to perceive that email that comes through asking them to do something? Or how are they going to feel if you say, hey, no, I can't make you a reservation over the telephone. You have to do it online now. Go to www.mybooking.hotel.com. How does that feel for your guests? So what's in it for me? What's in it for the guest? Really good way to think.
Thanks, Chris. I'm going to read out some comments from the audience here, and I think it touches on your point earlier, Chris, about needing to balance the tech with the physical, the digital with the physical, the sort of automation with the human. As a hotel manager, I like to give our guests what they want, need, expect when entering the hotel. I have found that across the board, they want to know what to do, where to go, and what to see. 9 out of 10 want a brochure or something to bring up to the room, and we direct them to the brochure stand in the lobby, which serves that purpose. So again, balancing the high tech and the high touch. Let's move the conversation to look at the hotel lobbies. And Rich, my friend, this is where you're being brought in here. What role do hotel lobbies play in shaping that guest experience?
Well, I mean, where do I begin? I mean, I guess Chris and Anna really have touched on it in lots of different ways. I mean, the key thing is these spaces becoming really important activation spaces. And, you know, one of the things I think as guests is we're becoming more and more hungry for experience and authenticity. I think we are, you know, when we go to a destination, we want to be fully immersed. So what does that mean? That means locality is really important, as we've mentioned, that whole kind of story, the story behind the hotel. Guests want to know all of this, and you know, it's interesting when we're saying about you know, zombie tasks, because a lot more of our, you know, hotels, when we finish the hotel, a lot more kind of the managers and staff are really grilling us for the most minute details, questions. You know, where did that piece of art come from? Where was that inspiration? You know, all these little snippets come into conversations that they have with their guests, which really, again, it kind of it really increases that level of authenticity. So you know, the lobby's becoming really, really important, and you know, like I say, much more immersive, much more vibrant, multi-use as well. What we're finding is that you know, collaboration is key. They're becoming much more open door, so you know, open to the locality. And I think I was reading somewhere that I think you know, millennials are much more kind of likely to use the hotel lobby as a meeting space, a workspace. You know, they're much more likely to find inspiration from these spaces. So again, coming back to the whole authenticity question, it's really important that you know, you've got this story that's unique, this story that's local, you know, that provides inspiration. Yeah, I mean, it's quite an exciting time, and the idea of making those mundane tasks sort of more seamless, drift into the background, gives you much more scope and potential to create this immersive environment, you know.
Could you provide us with some real life examples, Rich, of how the look and feel of lobbies are evolving? And I'll let you have full creative freedom over this. I say evidence, real life evidence. Maybe you can get your thinking cap on and give us some juicy ideas.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, there's lots of examples out there that I guess really, you know, some of the early examples of Moxie and the ACE with their kind of open door sort of policy. But like I say, this whole kind of I find this inspiration idea quite interesting, because one of the things about going to a hotel as a user, as an end user, is like, you know, you kind of get into character quite quickly, don't you? You know, like in a luxury hotel, you feel elevated. You, even if you're not, you feel elevated. You know, in someone that's much more kind of creative, kind of off the wall, you kind of get into that kind of character as well. So yeah, I mean, that, like for example, I mean, I guess really Mama Shelter is a really interesting one. You know, for obvious reasons, really vibrant, really bright, really energetic. But then, you know, you think of the Standard, for example, at King's Cross, and that's a slightly more elevated sort of, you know, members club feel to it. So yeah, I mean, everyone out there in some shape or form is treading this path.
It's fascinating to see how these communal spaces, as you said, are evolving. I think I hosted a webinar not too long ago, and a gentleman on the webinar said that for the first 3 minutes of when guests arrive on property, he wants them to feel confused, as if they've completely lost all touch of what used to be their reality. And he said sometimes that doesn't always pay out. It's not going to be for everybody, but the idea being that you are elevating that experience, even if it is through the design and architecture, obviously supported by the great service. And this brings me back on to Anna, because you've I know we had a little chinwag over the phone, and it seems like your role has been expanding over the years. So I'd like to learn more about your key learnings from deploying certain technologies. What have you and the wider front of house team learned from introducing tech, and especially those automated processes?
Yeah, so while we were rolling out our kiosk project across the hotels, there was lots of learnings for us internally as a business. You know, reasons why we wanted the kiosks. You know, why did we pick to have a kiosk over, you know, having more team members, you know, human interaction? And there was lots of different reasons behind it, but primarily, you know, coming out of the pandemic, where we saw, you know, a big dramatic drop in staffing level across the whole hospitality, that was a big concern for most hospitality industries, that we were losing really good, essential, experienced people for different reasons and things. So then we had to up our game and say, well, hang on a second, we have, you know, really busy hotels now, market is booming, and we don't have enough of our team members to do such an important, you know, task, and that's to look after our guests who are finally out and about, experiencing, you know, being back in London, but we just don't have the enough team members to look after all our guests in the right way that we wanted to. So looking at technology to help us, again, with the zombie tasks, the manual repetitive tasks, that was one key thing that we saw actually that could help us quite quickly, physically help the team members themselves, and help us from a commercial point to get the quality data in. So, you know, rolling it out, we rolled it out to a couple of the hotels. We started with our biggest one, which was a great challenge. Why, you know, start big. but it was great. We learned loads there. We had to look at internally what our current manual tasks were. What could the kiosk take away from us? What do we do with that extra time now that the kiosk is taken away from us? So we had to do a lot of retraining, look at our SOPs, one of how to use the kiosk, train our teams, get the teams on board was a challenge, because, it was very scary for some of our team members to think, oh, are we going to be replaced by kiosks? That wasn't what we wanted to have the kiosk. So we had to, reassure them, actually, the kiosks are to assist you because you are busy people and you need some help. So we got them on board and we got them involved with the project. We got them feeding back into us what works, what doesn't work, looking at the tasks that we still have to do because the kiosk doesn't do it all. How could we do that around the kiosk? How does it help us? So, one thing was allocating the bedrooms. We still have to allocate the bedrooms. So a team member has to do that. So we trialed, different times. Do we allocate it 1 o'clock in the afternoon? Do we try it a little bit later? So it was all trial and error for the first few months. And we listened to the team and their feedback. So if their feedback was actually doing it too early in the day, it doesn't work for us because we have guests arriving early and it means we have to go back and forth and deallocate and allocate. We listened to them and actually they proposed a different time and we went with it. We were like, yeah, let's trial that. And that was more successful. And then it just helps with the team confidence as well to say, this is really to help you and we're doing it, we're listening to you. So that was a good learning curve and we're still learning. We then had to think about our teams and that we physically took away a desk, their protective barrier as such, that they were standing behind. The way we positioned our new desks is that it's the focus in the lobby and the teams are in front of the kiosk. They're standing next to the guest. When the guest walks in, they actually stand next to them. So they no longer have that protective little barrier that they had before. So we had to look at, behavior training, confidence in the team to speak, and their body language is all different now. So, we had to give them that confidence, and that the team adapted to actually really well. And our managers, they do refreshers. I was with them last week, their last couple of courses, and it was really interesting to see how the team have grown into their new role, essentially, because now they're front-facing guests where they're actually interacting with the guests and they're assisting with the kiosk, but the guest is actually doing that part for them. So they actually just have time to talk to the guest about the local attractions and restaurants. So, and how to read a guest, if they're in a hurry, assist them with the kiosk, but then let them go on their way. So we had to look at all our internal kind of processes, adapt them, and let the team kind of be involved in it as much as possible, because at the end of the day, it's the team that are with our guests face to face. So we have to make sure that they're comfortable. And if they're comfortable and they're confident in using the kiosk, it runs much, much smoother. So we still have our team members that can help guests that don't want to use the kiosk, but it's so far been a really good uptake, especially with our leisure hotels. Guests just automatically go up to the kiosk. And you can see now the excitement in the team's faces that actually they don't have to look at how many check-ins are left for the day. It's just automatic now, and the teams are just, there's another guest, I'm just going to assist. Yeah. So it's been a good process, but lots of learning. And the key, I think, for us is that we had the team feeding back into us and the reassurance that this was actually something to help them and not to take over their role, that they're very much still needed in the lobbies.
It's a great case study of the soft skills and the hard skills, and how and why maybe hospitality is a great industry to work in, which I think sometimes is overlooked.
Yes.
But do you think it also gives them a sense of worth as well? Being able to have these casual collisions with customers and guests, and it's much more on an even level, I would think. Yeah,
it's just changed their whole morale of how they see their role now, that they're not just there to do the manual, I'm checking in number 52, I'm doing this. They're actually interacting with another human being. Yes, they're our guests, but actually they're human. They're here for an experience, they're here for a holiday, and our teams know the area the best. They can, you know, assist so much in other ways instead of just doing, here's another check-in, here's another check-out, here's the registration, please sign here. It's just helped them, you know, be there for the guest in a different way and not just see it as a robotic task.
Mm.
How, given that we've just heard quite a confident and reassuring story that actually tech can be used for the greater good, Chris, and maybe if the other guys want to comment on this as well, what do you think is preventing the adoption?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And as Anna was talking then, I mean, we're seeing this obviously more holistically across a wide range of customers. And we try and ensure that we say that this isn't something that is going to work for everybody right now. Eventually, more and more businesses will take their business to the cloud, online, and therefore data does flow easier when it's digital. But one of the really important things Anna raised that we see as one of the objectives, have I got the right word? Objections, sorry, not objectives, objections to adoption is what you're essentially doing with some hotels who are still very traditional is taking away years and years and years of fine-tuning process that is provided by human beings and saying, actually, this is faster and easier done by a machine that's connected to the internet, that's connected to a server somewhere off. We don't know where that data actually is, but you're going to have to trust that and stop doing what you're doing and stop doing things the same way and change. And it's that we've seen is one of the biggest objections is, well, if I do that, I'm not in control anymore, or I can't see this, or I can't see that. And then, of course, with after the pandemic, again, back to COVID-19, a lot of people left the industry. It became too volatile. So lots of very skilled, dedicated staff left, had to find alternative careers to make ends meet, and didn't come back. Yeah. So the industry lost a lot of good talent of those people-facing teams. So there is, in some ways, as the technology gets introduced and streamlines, there is in some ways an existential crisis as well. So one of the objections we see is, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. I've worked front of house 30 years. I don't need this technology to take over. And it's kind of getting to the point that we're trying to put out this little thought leadership piece of, well, actually, it's not you who needs to make that decision. It's your customers. If your customers are looking for more data or digital rich experience, then really you should be thinking about them, not your own personal needs. As I mentioned, that what's in it for me and what's in it for the guest, many hoteliers are still thinking too much about what's in it for them and their brand values. But some great stats and information online around today's traveler, and it's not just the younger generations, today's traveler actually are more likely to choose hotels or even retail experiences that are more tech rich and quicker and easier, and they get that instant gratification. So that's one of the big objections. I think still there's other things. Hospitality is quite a slow industry to adopt technology. So there's still this whole thing as well around cost, because sometimes change is going to be technology investment. It's also going to be investment in your staff to make those changes that Anna's mentioned and I've mentioned. So there's a cost element. But the other thing is, and I think this is probably going to echo and resonate with many of those attending, is if it's not broken, don't fix it. There's this mindset of, well, actually, everything's okay. It always is. My staff are fine. My guests are fine. And they're not doing enough of an introspective to actually see where the tech could be making things even better. Just because it looks okay on the surface, there might be this iceberg effect that actually underneath, your staff are upset and unhappy, your guests have got terrible reviews online, and maybe the tech could help bridge some of those gaps as well. So
do you have any evidence or insights or maybe data to maybe support how technology is improving efficiencies and productivity?
Yeah, for sure. So Anna's is a great case study. It was one of the first companies who took on our kiosk product, and across the board with those customers who are taking on the kiosk, once the initial hurdle of those process changes take effect. One of the most interesting stats we had from another property was, well, actually, since we put the kiosk in, we're getting lots of guests who can't check in on the kiosk because their rooms aren't ready. We said, okay, why is this? Is this the kiosk that's introduced this problem? And actually, their housekeeping teams were not introducing the technology from their side to say to the property management system, hey, this room's now ready. They were doing this at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the day as a batch. So one of the interesting things there was we were getting about 20% of check-ins were actually facilitated by the kiosk. Once we actually said to the housekeeping teams, hey, you can tell the PMS using tech, we've got the tech here at Guestline, your housekeeping teams can let the system know that that room's ready to occupy as soon as you cleaned it. And all of a sudden, the amount of people who could check in at kiosk went up, which means more people didn't have to go to front desk. So we've got tons of stats. I think we even published some on the website about the return on investment on our website. More than happy to post a link in, but they're hidden reasons to invest and hidden returns. I think Richard's probably got a ton of these as well, but for us, it's the amount of paper that you may save, because in a paper-heavy world, your guests are required to fill out this form, take this piece of paper with them, etc., print an invoice out, all of those interactions that you'd normally have where, oh, can you just print me a receipt? They've all gone. I think the other ones are, again, the amount of time that staff save doing these mundane tasks with the guest, that actually the guest and staff can be having more meaningful interactions and experiences rather than just those interactions being admin based. So yeah, lots and lots in terms of return on investment for the technology, but I think more in terms of that whole big question that we see is, should we do it, or are we ready to do this yet? I think we're starting to now say, well, you may find yourself even further behind if you don't make changes soon. But it's not right for everybody. We need to make that really clear. Not everybody is ready yet.
I want to bring Rich in here. It looks like you're almost about to say something. So maybe I hand straight over to Rich first in case you want to chime in.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting because it's not, I suppose it's not just about convenience, is it? Self-check-in. It's kind of, you know, we were kind of having this conversation before we got online, and you know, the whole idea of technology is that it needs to be as seamless and invisible as possible. You know, like us older generation can see the progression, can see where we've been, can see where we are now, but the younger generation are just born with it. So the key is to kind of make it as seamless and as less of an experience, a digital experience, as possible. I mean, that way, I suppose you can focus on the overall experience of entering the hotel, the psychology of entering that lobby, and reimagining it as to what uses you can use it for. If you take that whole element of that process away, I mean, like we're seeing, you know, brands get, you know, relevant brands can add experience and authenticity to you know, certain hotels. Local artists can come in and show their work, or local businesses. So it's, I guess it's the mindset of, you know, when you ask that question of the digital question, maybe the first question needs to be, well, hang on a minute, what can I use this lobby for? What is this lobby? You know, and then that whole the technology piece slots into it and makes this whole experience for the guest as seamless as possible. You know,
can I ask? Oh, please, if anybody wants to jump in.
I was just going to say, one of the really interesting things when we started researching, again, just going back to the kiosk, we tried to understand what the kiosk was there to do for the hotelier and for the guest. For the guest, a few of the questions that we asked customers coming into hotels, they just said, I want my room key. For the hotelier, there's a whole bunch of processes that need fulfilling. You've got to get some kind of commitment to a signature and a payment. You've got to get some guest information. For the guest, it's just want my key to get to my room. So when you balance those things together, as Rich said, the experience of the lobby, that's what the guest remembers. But if you put that friction of, well, we need you to sign this and we need you to pay and we need this, those are the things that the guest remembers. And so it's better to try and think, what experience are you trying to deliver? And what, again, I know I keep saying it, but go back in, what's in it for the guest? What are they trying to do? So definitely go for the experience side.
Rich, can I ask how your role is shifting in response to technology being added into spaces, and how that affects the sort of design and the actual function of interior spaces?
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess there's so many levels of technology that come into our role now. And it just as I said, you know, they all need to be quite seamless and intuitive. You know, they're there to kind of to be the invisible support for the guests. I mean, like, for example, you know, simple things like lighting, you know, lighting changes, affects moods. I mean, we worked on a hotel where we had a skylight in the basement, but we also had natural light coming in at the same time. So this was a fake skylight with natural light. So we had to program the lighting so it had the same hue as the natural daylight throughout the day. You know, little things like that the guest doesn't really notice, but it's a feeling, it's a sensation. Going into the room, you know, the temperature control, all those kind of things, they need to be seamless, but we need to integrate them into the design piece. Think of the circuitry, for example, of you know, how the rooms are wired, to make it as simple as possible, but also give the maximum amount of flexibility in the different effects that you can create within a room. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and science as well. Science is coming up with, you know, lots of new discoveries, like color, for example, how certain colors can affect your mind, how certain colors can affect your gut. So, you know, some things make you digest food better, some colors, you know, it's crazy. And it's really interesting as well, because it means that when you put together a project, you know, you've got science backing it up. You've got this real, you know, you're not just doing anything anymore because it looks good. You know, you know, you're creating something that really affects human beings, which is, you know, it's really interesting.
Anna, can I bring you in here to ask you the same question? How your role is shaping, and then you oversee a portfolio of 10, I believe, Point A hotels, just signed another or bought an office in Edinburgh. Yeah. So I know you guys are growing, but you know, boots on the ground, dealing with your staff day in, day out, but also looking at that hotel lobby space. What are you learning? What's new to you, and how is your role shifting?
Yeah, so yeah, my role has been evolving. It started off as, you know, looking at technology, managing what systems we use, what ones we want to, being ahead of the game and seeing, you know, how technology can help us. But we're actually rolling out projects, and the kiosk being, you know, the biggest one, especially that it actually changed the dynamic in our lobbies for our guests and for our team. You know, my role then ended up being, okay, it doesn't just stop once the kiosk is installed, once the hardware is in, once everything's plugged in and it all works. It's what's left now, because we changed physically, you know, the size of the desks. We took away the smaller reception desk and we put one big one with all the kiosks around. But now we need to look at the area around it. So do we need more furniture? Do we need to rearrange furniture? It went from moving plant pots around just to see if it would, you know, fill in some of the gaps that we had, because you can project manage everything until you're there in the space and you're looking around going, hang on a second, yeah, it's a great big desk and it all works, but when the guest walks in, that's all they see, and it's like, that's not the ambience that you want to create. So it went from moving furniture around, you know, working with our marketing team and our head of development to say, actually, we need to consider this space now. When we're putting in new kiosks, we need to look around, you know, angle it. Is it at the right angle? Is it at the right angle that the light comes in from the windows? You know, is it going to hit the kiosk and the guests can't see the kiosk screen? You know, and then looking at our teams spend most of their day in that lobby area. So are they comfortable now? You know, is the floor around it safe? Is it, you know, because we've physically moved things. So, you know, does it work for them? Have we positioned the table in such an angle that the sun hits them when they're working behind it or something? So we had to really look at everything. And again, just make sure teams were comfortable. They know what time the sun shines at what angle, where. So looking at that, do we need the blinds closed? Do we need them open? You know, the traffic outside, is it going to cause you know, a red reflection hitting into the lobby that's, you know, creates a different atmosphere. So it's evolved a lot, and working with the team and the hotel manager to just kind of see the final piece, the final product is the kiosk, but everything around it, because as soon as that guest walks in, you want to make them feel comfortable that they've come to somewhere that is comfort, is safe, is warm, and they can see that the kiosk is there. They can use it at their leisure, but they can also, you know, just sit down for a couple of minutes and then use the kiosk, put their bags down, you know. So just, it's evolved a lot, and didn't think I'd be, you know, looking at interior designing, but it all goes hand in hand. So working with our suppliers and things, that's helped to kind of put different people's perspective as well into the lobby. So currently as well, there's one feature in the lobby that I didn't pay much attention to, but now that I've been more in the hotels and actually guest watching, is we have these community walls at different, they're all positioned in different places at the moment. Again, it's just looking at what the best is for the guests, but they're a community wall essentially for our guests, that they have little photos of each team member, so they get to know who the team is, and the team will give a little tip or something that they like about London. And then we have our partners and recommendation and perks with, you know, QR codes for a discount, all on this one community board. And then what we kind of say to the guests and encourage them is that they can leave recommendations and tips for other guests. And while I've been in the lobbies just kind of watching, you see the guests, if they're just standing around waiting for their, you know, friend to come down or waiting for their taxi, you see them staring at this community wall and reading different bits of information, because we change it, you know, offers or local attractions, we do it quite seasonal. So it's always something new and relevant to the area, but relevant to the season as well. And you just see the guests kind of staring and taking it all in and trying out the QR codes or writing. So it was really curious just to watch them, that, you know, it's something so simple, but they've been using it, and you see our teams using it and kind of encouraging the guest of like, that restaurant you said, why don't you put it on our wall, or I want to try that. So yeah, that's been different to my role. Didn't think I would be looking at that side, but you're always, you know, learning and things. So we're always looking at what else can we do. So there's lots of things that we're looking for the guests. And one exciting thing that we're working on at Point A is, you know, giving the guests more information and empowering them to use technology for their comfort, you know, from the comfort of their own home. But something we're looking at introducing is selecting your room before you arrive at the hotel. So just like the airlines, you select your seats, why can't hotels select your rooms beforehand as well? So it's a new technology that we're partnering up with a new partner, and we're rolling it out as well. And at the moment, it's again a perk for our direct bookers, because, you know, they're the loyal ones and they're the ones that we want to manage and look after. So we're offering it to guests, again, that they can start looking at the hotel, and they make their selection based on the location of the room within the building, and then features of the rooms that we put in. So it's all in our control, and it kind of goes hand in hand with the kiosks. We know that the kiosks, we still need to allocate rooms. It's still a manual task. But if we have the technology that helps get those rooms allocated before they arrive, and the guest has the empowerment to select their rooms, it's another manual task that's actually helping to take away from our teams. So it's going hand in hand. And I think looking at technology, you have to select one that is going to work for you and your business, for your guests. You don't need to go everything super tech. You select the right ones at the right time, and they evolve. So we've got a really good rollout plan for our kiosks. It's been successful so far, and there's still lots of things that we want to do with it. And now with selecting your rooms as well, it goes hand in hand, and we're just making sure the guests are, you know, feeling that they have control before they even get to the hotel.
That blends in perfectly with what Chris was saying at the very top of this conversation, that guests now are more independent. They're the ones that are in control. And I think he used the airline analogy. I think there is a lot to learn from airlines in terms of checking in, selecting your seats.
Yeah.
Look at the upsells now with all your cabin bags and whatever it is, transfers that you might need. And all of this is really just to help set those expectations.
Exactly.
So that when you get to that hotel lobby, you can breathe a sweet sigh of relief. You've made it. You're here on holiday or business, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But
they're the key words, actually. I keep seeing it on the screen is the guest experience is what we're trying to focus on. But that expectation, setting the expectation correctly and either meeting it or exceeding it are what you should be focused on, because they're what deliver the experience. And obviously, Anna saying that I love the idea of the community wall piece, because it's still showing that guest may have had a digital experience because of their choosing, but they're still human beings behind the scenes. Exactly. And there's still a level of service, and that's what you're paying for, and that's why you're there. So it's all about elevating your brand to provide that experience.
Yeah, thank you. We are close to our allotted hour, so I just have some closing slides to run through before we sign off today. But Anna, Rich, Chris, thank you so much for your insights. A polite reminder that we're going to keep this webinar open for an extra 2 minutes just at the end to allow our audience members to follow up on any of the links that we've popped into the chat there, so that you can carry on with the conversation and connect on LinkedIn. Just want to flag our next webinar. It's taking place a week today on Monday, the 27th of November. And we're going to be looking at unlocking revenue potential with smart marketing strategies. The link to register has been popped into the chat there. Would love to see you there. And an in-person event, let's not forget that whilst this is a digital event, we also do the in-person stuff too, very relevant to what we've been talking about today. Recharge moves around to a different European city every year, and this time we are in Belfast on the 22nd and the 23rd of January. Tickets are on sale. Once again, further details have been popped into the chat there if you'd like to learn more. If you're interested in working with us either across our digital or physical events, please do get in touch with my colleagues, Rav or Piers. Their details are up on your screens. So once again, thank you. Thank you to Anna, to Rich, to Chris. Thank you to Guestline for our partnership today. Really enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure there's plenty that we could have carried on talking about. But once again, really appreciate your time and your insights. I bid you all farewell, and I will see you again very soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For short, IHM is the #1 brand to engage with decision makers in hospitality and real estate. Our 4 multimedia brands lead their respective sectors with breaking news, comments, trends and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments and low-cost digital content. And so they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 48,000 of our email database across all the sectors, and over 67,000 across our social channels. Everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, meet with IHM. Contact us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.